Welcome along, my aspiring allies, and thank you for joining me on this most recent episode of the Speaking of Inclusion podcast. Today, I am joined by Mary Desch, and I can't lie, I got a little bit of fangirly on this episode because Mary is an author of psychological thrillers. Her first novel being Tangled Darkness, which I read and loved. So when she was generous enough to come along and appear on the podcast, I absolutely couldn't wait. Now, Mary, as well as being an author, is also a former psychiatrist from Portland, Oregon. So all of the knowledge and information that she has from her career in medicine has been brought into the world of crime that she writes about. So it was fantastic to have this opportunity to talk to her. But also from a learning perspective, we had some really in-depth and insightful conversations about mental health, about the struggles of people who have issues with addiction, and the ways in which we can either show up for ourselves if we are the people impacted, or how we can support other people who might be going through those challenges. Mary gives some really practical and insightful advice as well, and she very generously offers her own time to support people should they need it. So please enjoy this episode. So without further ado, I'm so excited to bring to you on the Speaking of Inclusion podcast, Mary Desch. Well, hello. Let's
Hello.
try again.
Yeah.
How,
Well, did
how
you
was,
finish the book?
do you know what? Got it here. I have got, what am I, so we've done Michelle's house. I'm on chapter 38. I was gutted. I was trying to finish it last night because I think that the last. Oh no, 2 chapters left.
Woo!
I know. I was kind of like, when you're reading something at night, I'm like, I need to go to sleep. But I was like,
Yeah.
okay, go to sleep. But I've got the gist now. So we're doing. I know the next chapter starts with Sloane, so I'm like, oh, okay, we're going back there again.
Oh, well, thank you for
Loved
putting
it.
all that time into it,
Yeah, no, it's a good story. I like it.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, no, I've very much enjoyed reading it. Actually, it's been good.
Yeah, what a process that story was. I mean, it evolved from like 2020. Is that when COVID first we
Yeah,
went into the lockdown?
yeah.
I started getting ideas for it in like the spring, right after the lockdown.
Yeah.
And then I had a contract to publish the book in January of 24. So that's nearly 4 years later. It was quite a journey.
I mean, that's so fascinating because I know nothing about publishing and how those things work. Um, so I guess there's a lot of trust, isn't there, then that a publisher puts in you to be like, here's a contract. In X days from now, deliver a thing. Go.
And a lot of trust that I put into the
Well,
publisher.
absolutely, yeah. And you're like, okay, wait for an idea to drop, and then it does.
Yeah, well, I mean, I felt like the book was ready to go by the time I sent this to Rowan Prose Publishing. And they read the first 3 chapters and reached back to me and said, we want to offer you a contract.
Nice.
Then fast forward, several months and more than a year actually. And it's time for the final edits before the publishing date. And oh, there was more to do. They had read the whole thing by then.
Oh, they had notes.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
dare they?
But I
Excellent. That
was
well.
I was in the beginning, just like you said you were. I knew nothing about publishing.
It's fascinating to get these kind of inklings and insights into the essentially what other people do for work, and the fact that like there's legitimate process behind it, and time required, and like you say, it isn't as if you just like sit down like at a typewriter and just bash out a novel. Like there's
Not for
so
me.
much involved in it. Wouldn't it be nice if you could just you're sitting in a bay window somewhere with the rain outside, a cup of tea, just at your typewriter. Like that's how we all imagine it is.
Yeah, it's that glorified view we have. But I was on a total learning curve, and I was fortunate to run into this well-known author, Angela M. Sanders. She writes mysteries. And I'm trying to remember how I found her. Oh, it was through a mutual friend. And she told me about Sisters in Crime #1, which is a wonderful international organization to support women crime fiction writers. All kinds of resources and support there. And she also was my developmental editor for the book. And then I joined a critique group that she ran afterwards. Anyway, she said, this book is your PhD in writing. It was kind of like learning a whole new career or a whole
Well, it
new,
is, isn't it?
yeah,
It's exactly that. Yeah. Like you're
yeah.
resitting all of your job requirements on the job learning. Like it's just all of it.
Hmm.
And I
And it
love,
is lifelong learning, just like medicine was. Yeah.
yeah, I love how you also kind of called out there that all of the support as well that goes into the creation of, so we you kind of, again, with that idyllic thought that we have about writers, it's just a one person thing, but actually it really isn't, is it? There's a
Not at all. It's a total
whole,
community.
yeah, community. That is a good word. Like,
Yeah. Well, I was very lucky that I would say my best friend here in Portland, whom I met through my next door neighbor, we had been meeting for tea and chatting for a couple of years, and I'd been listening to her um, stories about writing stories. And when I told her that I had this idea for a murder mystery, she was like totally on board with support, and she introduced me to a lot of her writing friends. And before I knew it, I was part of this very bookish community, that Portland, Oregon, home of Powell's, you know. Um, I was part of the writing community. And they're very generous people, you know. They just included me and helped me tremendously.
wonderful. Oh, I love that. That's how it's kind of the way that you would want it to be, isn't it? Really, like you would like to imagine like creative people just being like, absolutely, there is space, come on in, you know. And
Mhm.
I'm love that that's your experience. I imagine it's probably not the same everywhere around the world, but I love that
Yeah,
that happened for you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like a little small town here in Portland. It's a series of neighborhoods, you know, just all stacked up. And it's a wonderful community. I feel very fortunate to live here.
Oh, that's really lovely. That's really awesome. And you mentioned there as well, so like the difference between um the, like relearning career as an author, in there's, it's a different career choice, but the parallels of it is actually going into your medical career. And FYI, we're recording already, so I feel like we're jumping in already because I feel like this is a really nice flow. Um, but I'm really curious how you switch, because those feel like utterly opposing kind of uh callings, I suppose. So
Yeah,
say more about that.
yeah. Well, you know, the differences, I mean, both are huge bodies of knowledge and, you know, um, systems to learn. But in medicine, I was in a very um, social environment most of the time, in the hospital, in the rehab center, in the residential treatment center, in the office. There are other people, people are coming in, you're interacting with people all the time. And in writing, it's just here I am sitting at my laptop. So much of the time is very solitary.
Mm.
So that was quite of a difference. But, you know, I've been doing medicine for, it seemed like forever. I came from this family with several members who had major medical problems. And so the family doctor, and this is back in the days where they would come to your house,
When you could
was
actually get to see a doctor as well.
yeah, they'd make a house call. And it was a small little town in rural Nebraska where I grew up. So that's kind of like the countryside, the farmland of the US. Um, the family doctor was kind of, well, he and his wife and his family were friends of my parents. Everybody knew everybody. But at any rate, I was going to say that he was such a character. I knew I wanted to do the kind of work he did. He was so helpful, to other people, and I wanted to do that. So by the age of 12, I had determined that I wanted to go to medical school. So
Wow.
that's a lot of years. I was just trying to count the numbers. I was 60 when I hung up my shingle, when I retired my shingle, I should say, from medicine. And so that's a lot of years of my whole work focus in medicine and particularly psychiatry and addiction psychiatry. Um, so needless to say, things changed a lot from when I first started to practice. I was 29 years old, and that was just the beginning of managed care coming in and telling doctors, well, this person needs to get out of the hospital when you're saying, well, they're not ready for it. Um, Lots of things changed. Healthcare changed so tremendously, and it's such a broken entity industry in the United States. Um, that frankly, by that time, I got to a place where my heart wasn't in it. I mean, my heart was in it when I was meeting with the patients, but there was
Yeah.
so much other around the system and the rules and just the trouble getting access to deliver to what the person needed, the type of care that they needed. Um, it was
Yeah.
tiring me out. Let's just put it that way.
I
So,
mean,
and it
that's
was,
yeah, I was gonna say that's really, I think that's really easy to understand for a lot of people because what I can imagine is like, exactly as you've just described there. I always think that people that get into healthcare are people that care about people. Like there's some sort of motivation to want to help people, to want to do things that, promote health and well-being and like happy, healthy lives for people. And I think there's also a lot of people that will really and certainly understand it. And so here in the UK, we have our National Health Service full of
Mhm.
people that just want to help patients. Like they just want to do their job, do it well, and show up for other people. And they're being crushed under a system that has like got bits bolted on all over the place. And you've got the bureaucratic nightmare. So I think that's kind of really easy to have that resonate with people as to yeah, we get that. You get into it for one reason and then it morphs into into all of the other
Yeah.
aspects of job, which is probably quite similar to a lot of jobs actually. We start doing a thing, don't we, thinking, I want to do this bit, and yet all
Mhm.
of the other stuff sits around it. You're like, well, I have to do all of that as well.
Yeah, and if enough time goes by, what you're used to just isn't what the way it is. I mean, I was used to private practice. I started after training in private practice, and that was 1986. And when Liz and I moved here to Portland in 2015, I had taken a job in a large corporate medical group where, there were multiple departments. Psychiatry was just one department. And addiction medicine was a separate uh, department, and they didn't talk very well together, you know. And so it was such an adjustment. Uh, it wasn't a fit for me. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah,
It wasn't a
yeah,
fit. So that's, I think, what tired me out about it. And do
yeah,
you know when I said okay, adios, and it was the end of 27, no, the end of 2019. Um, in 3 months, we had the COVID virus.
yeah. Do you think that decision for you to leave then like Do you wish you'd stayed, or were you relieved that you got out right before?
Yes and yes.
Ah. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a both and rather than an either or. Yeah, because the need for mental health workers just, I mean, it was, rising to begin with, but it just spiked. And, the non-mental health healthcare providers needed support in the areas of mental health, what they went through. It was just such trauma. The PTSD rate just
mhm,
spiked. But then on the other hand, I just hit 60 and I thought, well, maybe there's time to do something else. And now that I look back, I'm really very grateful that whatever the forces of the universe set it up for me, that I chose the way I did choose,
yeah.
so that I can be in this different place, and I can learn new things, and it's exciting to write. It really is. I keep getting story ideas, you know.
And how delightful is it that, like, I mean, admittedly, if we if it's possible to ignore the fact that a global pandemic occurred, but when you left your kind of, like, say, you retired from that particular career choice in 2019, and then the following year, as we were kind of just talking at the top, like, that's when these ideas for you started flowing in around writing and the book that you wanted to write, and how that might look, um, of which, so for people watching on YouTube, I have a copy here, as if by magic, Tangled Darkness. And I was just I was just saying to Mary, I'm literally two chapters from the end of finishing it. It's gripping. So I'm very delighted about that. But I love that you had all those ideas coming in to be, okay, I'm gonna be like a murder mystery. Um, and it really draws upon all of your experiences of, your career as well. So it's almost as if you've had two callings, and you've been blessed with two callings. So the first one was to get into medicine to begin with, and then the second one was to use everything you've taken from then and combine it with, clearly, this amazing creative writing talent that you have, that just seemed poised and ready to erupt from you when you gave it the opportunity.
Yeah, it really was an inspiration. I remember Liz and I were walking the dog yet one more time. It was like April or May of 2020. And I had been journaling. That's a whole nother story, but I've been journaling since maybe December on this one particular project thing. And I just said, I've got this idea to write a book. What do you think? Should we write a book together? And she just looked at me like, okay, you can count me out of the together part, but um, if you want to write a book, I'm all for it, or however she said,
Mm-hmm.
gave me her support, and and it took off from there. Yeah, I should tell a little bit of the story of how the characters emerged, don't you think?
I definitely, yes, please, because I think there's yeah, well, I have a load of questions about your career and your writing. So yes, you
Well, I don't
you
know
you get
if I don't know if you've ever read any of Carolyn Mace's stuff. It's Myss,
no, I
Carolyn,
haven't.
and she's kind of like a spiritual guru. And I've just listened to tons of her stuff. Her recordings through the COVID lockdown and those difficult years were just really inspirational for me. But what I was doing right when I stopped working in medicine was I picked up this book of hers that was kind of old at that point. It was called Sacred Contracts: Finding Your Divine Potential. Because, when you retire after years of working in one thing, you start thinking, well, what do I do? And so I thought, well, I'll just read this. And in the book, it was filled with all these journaling tasks. Now I want you to write about this, write about that, write about. So I was writing about all these kind of important moments, through the years of my life. And in the process of that, characters started coming forward. Like the very first one was one of the villains in the book, Bryce.
Yeah,
Bryce started to show himself.
definitely a villain.
Yeah. And then, you know, as I was journaling and I thought, "Oh, I could put a book together." Um, I was thinking, well, okay, it's who's going to be the lead character? And the thought came to me, well, write what you know. So it was going to be a psychiatrist and a woman and a queer woman. And so then I started to get the picture of Leslie, but Leslie really formed more slowly. The villains came through at first the most.
I wonder
And
what that says about you. Mind you, you're the psychiatrist. You could tell us.
yeah, yeah. Maybe it says, I was always fascinated with the sociopathic um, patient or client, the person who really doesn't get right from wrong.
Mm,
What is it about them? What makes them so different that they lack the ability to empathize with another person?
mm,
And so, and through my years of working in psychiatry, I was exposed to people in different environments. So, like for example, the forensic psychiatric state hospital in Minnesota, where I trained. Um, uh, that was a place where I got to moonlight at the end of my residency and see people who were in in a way incarcerated, but it was a psychiatric hospital. It
yeah.
was completely locked, and they assigned me, the youngster that I was, to the discharge unit. So if you got on the discharge unit, it really meant that you had the potential that you'd be able to get out within the next 10 years.
10 years.
Because these people were admitted after they were found guilty yet insane, you know,
Right.
not
Okay.
guilty by reason of insanity, truly major mental
Yeah.
disorders that took away their ability from right or wrong. That's just one example, but I was always fascinated with that. Like what removes from a person their ability to tell right from wrong.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. And when you said that it's all about that lack of empathy, because you kind of just assume, and we know that people have it to varying degrees. It's not the same experience for everyone, but we do rely heavily as a species, don't we, on we all experience it to some degree. Like there is some element of empathy that can be relied on to, yeah, to not harm each other or do
Mhm.
things, that are, yeah, just wildly violent or inappropriate. And there are people that don't have that. And I find that, yeah, I do. I find that curious as well as to how, like, how do we arrive there? Um,
Mhm.
and I guess my brain's also thinking like, just from a technical perspective, I guess. Like, is that lack of empathy? Is that something that like it's never present, or can things happen within your brain that can remove it?
Yeah, that's another really good question. Like, um, I think there are people who are just born like this. What is that? A Gaga song? I was born this way.
Yeah, born this way. Yeah.
Yeah. That there's a certain genetic profile in their families, things that cluster, the sociopath, the addiction problem. Um, And so the progeny, let's say, of parents with sociopathic problems are highly likely to have sociopathic problems. There and actually right around the time I was leaving medicine, there was interesting um, brain imaging findings that I happened upon at one time to uh, describe that in people with psychopathic or sociopathic profiles, there are areas of their brain that are different. And I haven't really followed that research, so I don't really know where it's going. But
Yeah.
then there's the kind of the everyday person where if the circumstances stack up just right, and fit into the personality profile of that person and their context, their historical background just right, that it can push any one of us
Mm.
to seriously harm someone or murder someone. There's that fascinating
Yeah.
calculation too.
Yeah. I mean, because let's face it, our brains and our bodies, I think that we know so little. Like we know a lot, but we also know so little, especially about brains, which is why I guess all of this stuff is so interesting, isn't it? That it's all based upon we learn things through case studies or the understanding of when these symptoms, is that the right way to express themselves? But just as a point there as well, what is the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath?
Well, a sociopath is, like a clinically determined um, personality profile. They have this many number of things that occur in their background before they're X number of years old. Like even in their childhood, they're doing things like setting fires or torturing animals or stealing or,
Mm,
you know, and then they have that projection into adulthood um, with the things that we've just talked about, the lack of empathy
yeah.
and so forth. Whereas a psychopath, I think of more as uh, not tied to diagnostic framework. Um, I think of it more as someone who is so far out sociopathically that, like, now their ability to measure reality or appreciate what reality is wonkers. Uh,
Right.
so, yes, people who are sociopaths can become psychotic. Um,
Got it. Okay. And so then like in the example you were giving before, where if we kind of think about the average person who wouldn't be considered a sociopath, but then when you were talking about if the right circumstances align, it can drive them to something. Is that then what we call a psychotic break, that like for off of the telly that I watch? Like something happens.
do you know our language is so inadequate in the world of psychiatry? I don't think we'd call that a psychotic break unless there were specific elements present, like the person became delusional, a fixed false belief, or we were convinced that they were hallucinating, hearing things that nobody else hears or seeing things that nobody else is seeing. Then yes, we would say psychotic. But um, let's just say the person, for example, who's so enraged at something that is so important to them. I'm just going to make up an example. Like, let's say um, a couple comes together and one of them comes from a lot of money and the other one comes from poverty. And they marry and have a couple of children. And unfortunately, the person who comes from poverty it just interacts with that wealth in a way that you could say is compulsive and addictive. and it just leads them to, uh, you know, self-destructive behavior.
Right.
Um, so that person could just lose it, let's say, and take someone's life, um, but not necessarily be psychotic. They could, for example, be in the course of all of it, misusing alcohol, misusing addictive chemicals, uh, but not necessarily intoxicated at the point of their wrong action.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just, the circumstances just built up enough and fit their background just enough
Yeah.
to make them do something that, you know, the word, we shake our head and say, that's just crazy
Yeah.
to take someone's life. Um, but it's not crazy in the allopathic psychiatric world as we use that term, psychotic.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of like the stars aligned in a really bad way for that person in with those particular circumstances, to the point that other quote unquote rational thinking people just couldn't understand how that could possibly have happened, because they don't have those particular like, it didn't align in a way that would have worked out that way for them, because their experiences just don't stack up in the same way.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think this is probably a wider piece as well, around how um you know there's so much misunderstanding, or I would certainly say from my perspective, just plain old ignorance, not even misunderstanding, around like addiction problems or mental health problems, or things like this, where it's outside of our frame of reference, so we just don't get it. And I think when I think about some of the listeners and viewers of this podcast as well, thinking there might be people in their families or their teams or their friendship circles who are going through things that they just don't get it. Like, it seems so out there. um and I wonder if there's a way that we can become a bit more self-reflective in that example that you just gave. Like, actually, for some people things just stack up in a way that we can't understand, and how do we demonstrate empathy for that when they are unable to demonstrate empathy for what, for perhaps if they are harming other people. Like, how do we start to reflect and think on that?
Yeah, well, what I'm thinking about as you formulate the question is about, the need for education. It's just really so crucial. And I know here in the US, we have, rising rates of substance misuse, alcohol misuse, mental disorders, and declining rates of access to resources to help. So to me, it's kind of like, it's a public health crisis, and it's, I'm using the word should, which I try to remove from my vocabulary, but it would be more like best. The best idea, I think, would be to look at it like we looked at cigarettes. We took on smoking and said, this is a public health crisis, and it's really leading to multiple problems all over the place. So, um, the rates of smoking really plummeted, and now those left smoking are just so truly addicted that
Yeah.
they don't, they're just hijacked by the chemicals. Um, so I think of education, number one, and and that could be for, children as young as, later elementary school, certainly junior high school. Um, and uh, I mean, adults as well need this
Yeah.
information to
And it
be
feels
able
like a
to.
retrospective education as well, because this certainly, I'm not young, but I'm not that old either, and this certainly wasn't taught at school. Like, at all. Like mental health was not a consideration. Like, our kind of holistic wellness was not considered.
Yeah, well, yeah, there are classes like physical education. We teach the importance of physical exercise and pay attention to the physical body. And then, communities support the importance of our spiritual health, and we have places of worship and different faiths so that we can practice. Um, so if it's body, mind, spirit, what about mind?
Yeah.
I think we ought to insert that, you know, and begin maybe the education for the adults would begin by uh, targeting their kids
Mm.
by age 9, 10, 11, beginning to teach basic concepts. I remember being taught about the different food groups, healthy ways to eat. So, why not talk about stress management and
Yeah.
mindfulness um, early? And that could be a way to
Yeah.
reach the parents of the kids too.
Yeah. And actually what that's just sparking in me is like how the amazing impact that could have on I'm gonna think through just workplaces currently, but to be honest, society. In when I think about the the situations that arise, I know full well there will be people in positions of leadership that know they could be paying attention, because I'm going to not use should, we're going to go with could, but if this resonates with you, maybe you can replace that with a should. um could be paying attention to their stress levels, right? And not just knuckle down, crack on, keep on keeping on, keep pushing. And I know, because it used to be me too, that when you're a bit stressed out, we have a glass of wine, we chill out with insert whatever vice your choice is. And we kind of like to think that we've got that in control, but have we really all of the time? Are we really paying attention? um and even when we might well not consider it problematic in the same way that it maybe shows up for other people, is it really also a matter of wellness? Do we also want to be thinking about, yeah, but in an ideal world would I choose to do that? Or is it a coping mechanism? And then
Mhm.
I'm also thinking about how, and I feel like this is probably a universal experience as well. I so many countries are having cost of living crises, and you know everything we read about on the news at the minute is just horrifying. So are we also then turning to substances as a coping mechanism, both through our stresses that we're facing, just trying to live as humans as well, not just at work anymore, but just like trying to get through the day as a person?
Mhm. Yeah. Uh, or could we turn in a different direction? Could we turn towards community, getting together and communicating and deciding that, you know, engaging with the madness of the world, um, you know, to the extent that it leads to self-destructive coping mechanisms isn't the right way to go. Let's come together as a community and let's, think of more constructive ways that we can be a neighborhood. I think it really starts at the grassroots level. Maybe it's in song or maybe it's in a group effort to clean up the neighborhood, pick up the trash and litter that's around. Think of things that are positive and contribute just little drops. If there's enough little drops across the world, it can eventually make an influence.
Yeah, totally. And actually, coming back to the thing you were saying earlier around COVID, that whilst we saw that real peak in, mental health challenges that people were facing because of the amounts of stress they were under, actually we also saw some incredible acts of community, didn't we, of people really coming together
Yeah.
when faced with something bigger than ourselves. And my kind of fear is we've also gone back to like business as usual now, like we haven't got a pandemic anymore, so never mind that neighborly stuff. And I loved what you said about actually, yeah, find community in your neighborhood. Like, what can you create locally that is as
Hmm.
simple as coming together just to find some joy?
Exactly. You don't have to, reach in your pocket or in your wallet for any money. You just have to give of your time and your interest. Uh,
Yeah.
and, be willing to set down your phone, um, the internet, or the list of to-dos for
Although
long
not until
enough.
they've finished listening to this podcast. Put your phone down after that.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
Yeah, do this and then go and do something for your soul.
Yeah.
Awesome. Something else that also came up for me there as well, and I don't know if it's a question or if it's just a thought, but was as we were talking about kind of teaching the younger generations kind of different coping mechanism, understanding their own mind in alignment with their body and their spirituality. And part of me is wondering if, as we see new generations coming into the workforce, there seems to be a shift in people being more driven by purpose, being more driven by healthier working practices, because they don't have a frame of reference of the previous way of doing things. They've come into a very different world. And yet a lot of leaders are actually pushing back, saying, no, we need to go back now to what we had before, because that's what we're used to and that's what was productive. And quite critical of younger generations going, no, I don't want to do that. Whereas
Yeah.
maybe
The
this is
20,
an opportunity to embrace some of that.
yeah, like the 24-hour or the 24/7 workday, when
Yeah,
we all had Blackberries and, it was cool to just, be emailing all the time your
yeah,
work stuff when you weren't even working. There were no boundaries. Um, I hope we don't go back to those kinds of days. And I applaud, you know, um, the the young men and women who are coming into the workplace and saying, "Nah, I'm not going to do that." I have a
yeah.
couple of nephews in that Gen Y, I guess you say, space, or no, it's Gen Z,
Gen Z, yeah,
Gen Z space. And, when I talk to Griffin, he'll say things like, you know, climate change, AI, um, why should I mean, it's all heading in this direction. I'm going to play ultimate frisbee as much as I can. And yeah, I'll have a job, but um,
yeah,
I'm not going to go wacko on the job. I'm going to try to have some fun and joy in life
yeah.
because life is short.
Because it turns out I want a life.
Yeah, yeah,
I
I
mean,
want a
and
life.
yeah, and here we are going, oh, that's a bit much to ask, isn't it? Enjoy your
Yeah,
life. Whereas we're all waiting for retirement to then find
yeah,
things that we really hang on a minute, we've got this upside down.
yeah,
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 there's a learning point in there somewhere, isn't there? Which
yeah.
I guess brings us back nicely then to what you do in your retirement, which is you kind of transitioned. And I guess I suppose for you this must be a source of joy as well, which like you must enjoy the act of creating a book.
It's it's a passion. I tell you, it's so much fun to um experience creativity moving through you, like here's one. And I was just on a Zoom learning about structuring stories, and I got an idea for, like like a real short story, but it's about these two brothers and they grew up in this traumatic environment and blah blah. It just comes out, and it just I love that. So I can't wait to get to that piece of paper. Um, yeah, it. it's kind of a passion. I really don't like calling it work or a career or anything. It's more of a passion for creativity.
I really love that. And it's like that describing like that lightning strikes of like a here's an idea, and you're like, excellent, write that down. I also have to apologize. My cat has joined. I
Oh,
don't know if you can hear it or not. Sometimes Zoom can get rid of her and sometimes it doesn't. Um,
what does
she
she
does.
say?
She's just yelling at me. She's just gonna stand there and yell at me. So that's exciting.
Yeah, yeah. Pay attention to me.
Honestly, yeah. I'm like, I put your food down, love. Like this isn't your moment.
Yeah,
But yeah, there she is anyway. So yeah, so like coming back to that kind of embracing that creativity and doing your, you know, your second calling and career of embracing that. I just think that's a beautiful, and also you're incredibly good at it, because I'm really really enjoying the book. And I wonder as well if there's I like that even the lead character Leslie in that, like she's not a perfect human, is she? She's got her own stuff that she's clearly been through, and you get these moments of her really reflecting in the experiences she's having as well. And I find that kind of the portrayal of the humanity in that really great. Like you can really resonate with the character in that way, which I think is awesome. Um, and I wonder like how when you build those characters, is that kind of intentional, like building those aspects in, or how does that come together?
absolutely. I think that's why it took so long to develop Leslie is that what what I had to learn was that the main character, first of all, you don't have a story unless the main character goes through, what we say is a transformation, a change. Um, but it's not that you're really trying to write someone who's likable. You're trying to write someone who's interesting or relatable, relatable probably is the best word, so someone who's got their warts, as she has her strengths and her weaknesses. She's been through some tough things, but she's also accomplished some important things. And so, in that sense, probably a lot of people can relate to that, because that's like life.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm gonna do no spoilers, but there is this kind of moment where she's experiencing something in her own career, and she has this kind of excruciating like battle with herself. Like, do I tell my wife about this? Do I not? Like, and you kind of watch her grapple with it, and then you know there's this need that then later on the sheet for the apology that she needs to make, and she's like, oh, I don't know if I've got to time it right, and it's so human and so real. Like it's such a small they're small moments that necessarily don't form like the arc of the story, like they don't add anything to the story, but it is those moments of being like, yeah, I feel that. Like we've all been
Yeah,
there. Yeah, yeah, the
yeah,
resonance.
yeah. I tell you that is such a craft to be able to construct the plot, like what's happening out there, and then put a main person, living their life through that plot and make the background of that person fit in such a way that, what's happening out there is fueling this change in the main character. And what's the change going to be? Is it going to be that they, descend, or are they going to, emerge with a new way of looking at things because um, they've undergone this kind of worldview shift? Um, and those are the ones that I like the most, where, the person's operating under some false belief about themselves. And then they come to realize, wait a minute, that's not even right.
Or in the case of some of the characters, they don't come to believe that either.
Yeah, yeah,
They continue through completely oblivious that their
yeah, right.
experience isn't the only experience of truth. Yeah.
The witness right where you're at in the book. The chapter was Sloane talking to his attorney.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
just doesn't. He just doesn't.
Yeah.
Um,
No acknowledgement. And something else I really liked in there as well, and it kind of echoes when we had our first conversation about doing this podcast, when you quite rightly pointed out as well, when we think about people in recovery, like Leslie, um, just because you've stopped doesn't mean that you're better, like you're fixed, quote unquote. Like it's a process, it's a constant attention that is needed to who you are and what's going on. And I think the work, even in just kind of a few short moments through the book, but it was really illustrative of the work required of somebody trying to stay on top of things.
yeah,
um and that I think was really brilliantly handled. So and obviously from your career, that's something that you will have seen, I guess, in many people, the work that is required.
yeah. And your everyday person doesn't necessarily have anyone in their life who has gone through that process. I mean, first of all, a lot of us have, you know, family members, loved ones, friends, neighbors, whatever, with addiction issues in, either presently active addiction or in their past. But a lot of people don't really get what it takes for a person with addiction to stop using and stay stopped. Stay stopped. That's the key. And that there's a lot that goes into that in terms of how the person accesses help to keep an eye on themselves. You know what I mean? To not just get lost in the old way of thinking.
Because I imagine that's kind of like, uh I'm I'm sure I see, I have a menopause brain, so there's words that I'm trying to find that are not presenting themselves. But like it's kind of like the brain's equivalent of muscle memory. Like whatever the neurological pathways that have been created in someone, they're still there, and they need new pathways creating, don't they? And it's kind of like that's a lot of work to just not, and I guess it's kind of akin to something as simple as you've got a bit of a habit of having a bit of chocolate every night, and then you think, oh, I should stop that. And how hard is it to just not have a bit of chocolate? And that's just, that's not an addiction, that's just a habit that you formed. So then when you layer in like the actual gravity of somebody trying to handle an addiction, like it really takes, like you said, constant effort to keep, yeah, to stay stopped, to stop and stay stopped.
Yeah, it's not just stopping, it's staying stopped. And then after staying stopped, it's staying stopped with peace of mind,
Mm.
Ooh, that really adds another layer.
And how does that show? What does the peace of mind bring? How is that different?
Well, I don't know if you've ever known anyone who um, let's say had a problem drinking or whatever, and it's the month of January, so it's going to be detox month. You know what I mean?
Everyone's on dry January. Yeah.
Dry January, right? But there are some people dry January and whatever, they just have their cranberry soda, whatever. And there's other people who are like, you know, really stressed about dry January and just constantly checking the calendar. Is it February yet? Is it
Yeah.
February yet?
It's
Um,
nearly, yeah, we're on the 29th of January. It's nearly February. Surely this is good enough, right?
close enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the peace of mind part is I'm trying to describe it in a way. Did you ever read any of Eckhart Tolle's stuff? The power of now.
Yes.
You know,
Okay.
the the peace of mind of being present on the 29th of January and just not thinking ahead or not thinking, back to December and the wild parties around the holidays,
Yeah.
who's just now present, and that's all they have. Um, I used to call it the pinball of the mind, the past, the present, the past, the present, and they're not just going, uh, letting their mind take them away from the moment that they have.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
peace of mind is somewhere around what Eckhart Tolle talks about, the power of now.
Yeah. And that I think is, thank you for giving that explanation, because it's kind of helping with that, like the making peace with the moment that you're in, like accepting being present. I think presence is a huge learnable skill, right?
Yeah, we could put that into our curriculum, to start teaching to 10-year-olds. They could probably tell us a lot about presence, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're not
In their
wrong.
playtime, how much presence do they have? They're totally in play.
Mm. And is there an element as well in that kind of peace of mind that I can imagine the weight, for someone trying to stay in the peace of mind, staying stopped, um, and then they slide back. They make a mistake, they do a thing. Like we all screw up. We're all humans, right? We cock stuff
Mhm.
up all the time.
Yeah.
And then the weight of that must feel a lot. That must be a heavy weight to bear if you're someone who's really actively trying to change a behavior pattern or to change something, and you screw
Yeah.
up. That's got to be tough to handle.
Yeah. Well, that really brings to mind, one of the key elements in addiction, and that is that whole shame base,
Mm,
that if you talk to a lot of people over time with addiction, you find this common pattern of um, people believing that they are just, you know, no good. I'm trying to think of the right language, People use, um, I'm the, lowest of the low. I'm trying to articulate the shame base.
yeah,
I mean, I am so bad. I am the baddest of the
yeah,
bad, you know? And so I think what is in line with recovery and staying stopped with peace of mind is learning a new way of thinking that removes that. that
mm,
removes that. And I think for a lot of people, that is a kind of a worldview shift that I talked about when writing stories, where people all of a sudden come to realize that they're operating on some belief about themselves that just isn't right. It's just inaccurate. And so that whole judgmental, tone or way of operating, that kind of has to go. And that's a practice. That's part of the
yeah,
practice of recovery. And I
yeah,
think that's why people who succeed use an element of community. I mean, they're going to meetings, they're in groups, they work with other people who have addiction and are recovering. And there's a power of that synergism where they help each other, stay on the path, stay on the
mm,
path of um, right thinking.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's two really significant things you said there, isn't there? Like that actually, something about the kind of the therapeutic work of unlocking the thing within you that is potentially lying underneath and driving a lot of the kind of the behavior that you don't want, um and actually then taking its power away by noticing it, acknowledging it, understanding it,
It's you shine a light and the power's gone. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah, no, yeah, exactly, the dark shadowy corner when the light's on is no longer a dark shadowy corner.
Yeah,
and then knowing that other people who have had that get you. And I think that's kind of the judgment thing that I guess is like the shame that they're feeling, and then the expectation of judgment from others. And then if you're in a community where you can trust that actually that you won't be met with judgment, you'll be met with compassion, because those people have had to do the same shiny light, exploration as you have. And I can imagine that is
exactly.
hugely powerful.
Yeah, and before you know it, a group of people are um, laughing, laughing about the craziness, the insanity of addiction, of trying the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different outcome, or reviewing the past over and over again, trying to create a new past.
Yeah.
A group of people that can rise above. Now they're witnessing it with mindfulness, and they can lighten up
Yeah.
and feel the chemical changes of laughter, and that helps a person who's slipped or relapsed, uh, you know, stay close to the herd, you know, because that's where they feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess what I'm hearing in all of this, if there is someone listening to this who has maybe been contemplating with the fact that they might need some help themselves, maybe this is an opportunity for them to explore that, and to, to get some signposting, to support that'll help them with that searching process around how do they find whatever it is that's, to reclaim their power, and find the community um, that will help them with their particular challenge that works best for them. And I wonder as well
Yeah,
if
and they're out there. It's not that you need insurance pre-authorization. You don't have to start with your primary care. You might start with your primary care, but you don't have to. But I would just say if there is anyone listening and um, they want some direction, they can just send me a note from my website. It's Mary, Mary, Desch, DESCH.com. That's my website. And then there's a contact page where you can just send me a note, and I'd be glad to email with you to generate some ideas about how you can get some support.
perfect. I think that's a hugely helpful and hugely generous thank you, because I can imagine if there's someone who's just got a little rattling going on, that maybe they just want a kind ear, um, they can, then that, I think that's a fantastic offer of support. And I guess for people who maybe are listening to this and thinking, oh, I'm a bit worried about someone in my team. I'm thinking about people adjacent to people that are directly experiencing this. Do you have any kind of words of support for them as to something they could think about in helping them maybe notice things, or just show up as a better human in support of someone that might be dealing with something?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things is, I mean, are uh, to
Look at
number
you, the
one.
writer on autocorrect.
Yeah, yeah, I'm on autocorrect. To number one, um, engage with that person. Because sometimes it's a little scary and you feel like, oh, geez, I better leave them alone and let them work it out. But but people know when it's that if you listen to your gut, you can find a right time to engage and engage with something that is authentically something that you authentically feel positive about that person, about. Like, this is the funniest friend I've had, or this neighbor of mine has been so generous. To begin with that, you know, I've been thinking about you lately and how generous you are. You're always baking another pie for the neighborhood meeting, and to start by showing that person their positive self because they may be in a place of, I'm the lowest of the low. I'm really bad. You know, the essence of me is wrong, that kind of shame base. Um, and then to just make yourself available. I've missed you. If you ever want to, talk, maybe let's go get some coffee. Um, there's that. And then there's also support through getting together with people who are experiencing the same thing. And if you don't need insurance authorization, you don't have to get a prerequisite, whatever. And it's the same offer. If it, just send me a note through my website. I'd be glad to listen to what your resources are in your community and help steer you towards where you can find kind of support. They're usually groups for people who are experiencing the same thing. And there's a real power in that when you get a group of people, let's say they're going through cancer treatment, and you get a group of people, 12 people who are all going through cancer treatment together, and they're talking about what it's like. There's a total power in that. And it really, the synergy of that and the support of that really improves outcomes for those folks. So that method really helps.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you. And what a theme that's really coming through in all of our conversations actually here is the power of community, like finding the people who are showing up for you in the way that you need showing up for, and in return you showing up for them as well. The community, as you were talking there around kind of health and well-being, and the understanding of people that are going through things that are similar to you, whether it's something affecting you specifically or you because of someone in your life. And also
Mm,
then the community that you found when you began writing, and people, you expressed what you needed and people showed up.
exactly. And then these new authors I've met, I've thanked them so much for their help, and please reach out to me if I can be of help to them. Then when I get an email that says, "Oh, could you read this and give me your review of it?" Then I can act in kind to be supportive to them. And that just, like builds great relationships where you can help each
Yeah.
other out along the way.
Yeah. And I guess that's the whole kind of the reciprocity and paying it forward, isn't it? Um and we talk about this so frequently in terms of even when people do kind of altruistic work with charities or things like that, it still feels good. Like, even doing something for nothing still feels good, and we do it for ourselves. Like, we do it because we like it. um
Yeah.
not just because we feel we should. So and I love that as well. And I'm sure just hearing this has been really helpful to a lot of people. So in true kind of speaking of inclusion style, we've already had your website, Mary. So thank you so much for sharing that. Are there any other kind of channels in which people can find out more about you?
Oh gosh, you could just put my name in your search engine and
She's a famous author, peeps. You can just Google her.
well, if you put um, Mary Desch author interviews, for example, in because of the Tangled Darkness book that came out, I had the opportunity to do interviews with a number of different places. So you can read about that. So that would be a place to start. Um, yeah, I think my website, that's got a bit of a bio about it, about me, and a contact page, and also information about the series that I'm working on right now, the thriller series.
Oh,
So if you find that you like Tangled Darkness and you finish it and think, I wonder what else she wrote, you can look at the series that I'm working on. I'm real excited because I just put out the sequel to Tangled Darkness here in the US. And it's just been out for like 3 days. And so I'm totally excited. And then I have another, the sequel is a novella. So it's a short read. It's maybe about 110 pages. The next one that will come out in about a month, it's another novella about 110 pages, and it's going to be the prequel to the next novel. Um, and the next novel I am currently polishing. So I'm hoping that it's out there this summer.
So anybody that was kind of watching along with us on YouTube will have seen me frantically scribbling things down there because like I say, I'm 2 chapters from the end of Tangled Darkness and I'm very, very much enjoying it. It's a really good book. So please, what is the name of the sequel, the novella sequel?
It's called If I Go Quiet. And it starts out in Leslie and Izzy's kitchen where they're at the kitchen table. And Izzy's father kind of rushes in the house.
Brad.
Brad Turner, the retired
I
homicide
like Brad.
detective. Yeah, yeah.
He's
So it
kind of like
starts
he's the neighbor that you want. I've got to be honest. I don't know that I'd want him for my dad, but I definitely want him for a neighbor.
really, he could fix anything. He's got all these contacts through his police connections. Yeah. And plus, he's a nice guy.
So
Yeah.
far, and I'm hoping that you don't do anything to destroy his character because you never know. We fall in love with characters, don't we, thinking they're great, and then something happens, and you're like, oh, well, that's that ruined.
Yeah, that's another thing about writing that I just love. It's creating this world of characters. So now I have 4 stories and I can make a character Bible out of all the characters. And then I can dream up, oh, what about Izzy has another sibling, you know? She's one of 5 children, so that's 4 brothers and sisters she's got. We can bring them in. And by
You've
the
got a
way,
whole
Leslie,
side quest.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Love it.
So it can just expand. Yeah, it's called If I Go Quiet.
If I Go Quiet, and does the prequel that have a title?
The title is Lethal Loyalty.
Mm.
And so it will start out seeming like, wait a minute, there's nobody in this story that was in Tangled Darkness because it's leading into the full book that's about Leslie's cousin Grace. Do you know, since you've been reading the story, you've been periodically learning about it. It's really her mother's cousin, but
Yeah, I
they're
was going to
kind
say
of,
that the letters are in there, so
yeah,
we've had droplets strewn in.
yeah, it's really her second cousin, but they're not that far apart in age, probably less than 10 years or maybe 10 years apart in age. So the next full novel, which I'm calling Play Me Once, is the story of Grace as the protagonist.
I love this. And if anybody is listening from like Netflix, feel free to turn this into a Harlan Coben style miniseries. Thank you. We're all here for that.
Oh yeah, it's so much fun creating. It really is.
Yeah, it's wonderful. No, I genuinely, Mary, I'm very much enjoying your book. So I do. I mean, I tend to find podcast listeners, and I don't want to generalize, but us podcast listeners, we love a true crime podcast mostly. Most people I speak to, when we're into inclusion and we're into being curious, we love a bit of true crime, and I feel like this is going to be right up their street. So I thoroughly recommend it, and I will definitely be latching onto the novellas as well, and waiting with anticipation for the summer for the next novel. This is very exciting,
The next big book.
and I will I will let you know what I think.
Well,
So long as
thank
Baby
you.
J stays consistent, I've got to be honest. I was mildly worried. So Baby J is a dog.
Yes, a
When the dog
border
goes
collie.
missing, that was my biggest concern. I've got to be honest. I stopped caring about Izzy. I was like, but what about Baby J? Where's the dog?
Yeah. All those border collies, they get into your heart. They're so smart.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was very obsessed. But I don't want to spoil it. But Baby J's fine.
Oh, good. Yeah.
That was my biggest concern was that I'd have been quite annoyed with you if we'd have come onto this call and you'd killed off the dog. It would have been a terrible,
No, to
terrible.
me, that would be, like I don't want to get religious, but a mortal sin. You
Yeah,
know? Yeah, yeah,
agreed.
yeah, yeah,
I would have had a serious bone to pick.
yeah, yeah.
Good. Well, Mary Desch, is there anything that you came to say that you haven't had an opportunity to say?
Just I'm so honored and flattered to be part of your podcast, and thank you so much for inviting me. This has really been a lot of fun, and I've enjoyed our conversation. Maybe down the road we can do something again. It's really been great.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to say yes to that because you've got more books coming out, so we could keep doing this and I could keep talking about them. So that is awesome. I'll probably have to create a side podcast now just where I can have a fan kingdom for your book series. I want it on record that I was first.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
Mary Desch, thank you so much for joining me on the Speaking of Inclusion podcast.
Thanks, Katie. I appreciate it. Great to be here.